I'm John Jarvis, the Director of the National Park Service, and I am humbled to be here this morning with the families of the heroes of Flight 93 to dedicate this memorial to your loved ones. Today, we also recognize those who made this memorial to the passengers and crew of Flight 93 a reality. People from this community, from this state, and from across the nation who share an unwavering commitment to make this field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, an eternal tribute to those whose unselfish actions spared lives of so many. Thousands of people have made the journey to be here in this solemn place, and millions more are watching or listening to this ceremony. Please welcome you all. Let me also welcome several of our distinguished guests. Speaker of the House, John Boehner. Members of the congressional delegation who are here with us as well. There are many state elected officials here as well, representing the state of Pennsylvania. And there are many local officials who have been so instrumental in protecting this site over the years. Ten years ago, Flight 93 took off from Newark, New Jersey, bound for San Francisco. Terrorists hijacked that plane and 3 others that terrible day as part of an organized attack on this country. The hijackers turned the plane towards Washington, D.C., aimed, we believe, at the United States Capitol, where both the House and the Senate were in session. They never made it. Because of the determination and valor of the passengers and crew of Flight 93, that plane crashed in this field, less than 20 minutes by air from its presumed target. In the days that followed, as the courageous story of what happened aboard Flight 93 emerged, the flag that had been at half-staff above the U.S. Capitol was brought here by Senators Arlen Specter and Rick Santorum to fly as a solemn tribute above the recovery personnel and the investigators as they sorted through the wreckage. In just a moment, following the presentation of the colors of the National Park Service Honor Guard, I ask that you turn your attention to the flagpole behind you, as 2 FBI agents who were here during that investigation will once again raise that flag, the flag that flew over the U.S. Capitol on September 11th, as the first flag to fly over this permanent memorial. As we dedicate this memorial and commemorate the inspiring story it tells, those who lost their lives are never far from our thoughts, or from the thoughts of those who were spared by their actions. Among us today are people who were in the Capitol or at the White House on September 11th. I would ask them to please stand. Now I would invite everyone to stand for the invocation offered by Father Daniel Coughlin, who was chaplain of the House of Representatives in 2001, and to remain standing for the singing of the national anthem and the presentation of the colors. Father Coughlin.
Let us pray. God bless America. Here we stand, united in memory and dedication. Here, a prayer rises from hallowed ground, made sacred by great heroic self-sacrifice so others might live. Here is found the beginning of a new national pledge of allegiance, inspired by those who would grasp the few moments given them to take matters into their own hands and truly make a difference. Resolved never to be victims of circumstance, here true Americans witness to a living truth beyond themselves. their hope to free others who with them will change the world. Desirous to end terrorism and violence, they became willing seed planted for freedom's harvest. Only unbelievers, Lord God, continue to seek a sign of your love and forgiveness. For we know you have heard the prayers murmured here over a decade. Has this anguish been neglected too long? Have we not witnessed enough? Ordinary people on their way to work or family reunion offer on the altar of this plain all they had, all they loved. Then, threatened, they refuse to be paralyzed, finding within themselves an art beyond politics. They break the silence and decidedly act together. They do only what is possible in an impossible situation. Because they are your children, they find within themselves true freedom. From them, Lord, teach us how to release ourselves from the seatbelt of economics and draw us together to rush forward to the future, unafraid, because you again give us a sense of direction. Lord, by this dedication, lift us from sin and death to renewed faith and prayer. Bring us and all our sisters and brothers to a new life, for we place all our trust in you, both now and forever. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. This memorial is to 40 remarkable people. In less than 30 minutes, they understood their situation, voted on what to do, and acted. Each of them is an American hero. Poet Robert Pinsky will now share with us a reading and then call the names of the passengers and crew. As each name is read, representatives of the first responders will toll the bells of remembrance. Gordon Felt, president of the families of Flight 93, a steadfast supporter of this memorial, and brother of Flight 93 passenger Edward Felt, will then offer his thoughts on this day, on this memorial. Robert.
Any people, a people, is what it remembers. For us, the American people, Flight 93, because we remember it, has become a significant part of who we are and what we are as a people. However, let's confess and acknowledge that on a communal occasion of memory, and whenever we speak of memory, we also are thinking about forgetting. And we can't know what our great-grandchildren will remember, though we know they will remember this. There's always the fear of the waters of Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. In a beautiful two-line poem from the 19th century, Lethe is mentioned. Here's the two-line poem. On love, on grief, on every human thing, time sprinkles Lethe's water with his wing. And it is true that on love and on grief, forgetfulness is sometimes sprinkled. The two very short poems I'm going to read to you deal first with the way we can't help what we remember. Nobody wanted to remember this event. We didn't want to have the burden as well as the honor of this memory. The first poem is about that helplessness that we remember, whether we want to or not. And the second poem involves the redeeming decency, reasonableness, and in the case of these 40 people, indeed heroism. The first poem about needing to remember even if you don't want to, about the way the world has changed. Like many great things about events, this poem was written decades before September 11th by the great Brazilian poet Carlos Drummond de Andrade. It's called Souvenir of the Ancient World. Clara strolled in the garden with the children. The sky was green over the grass. The water was golden under the bridges. Other elements were blue and rose and orange. A policeman smiled. Bicycles passed. A girl stepped onto the lawn to catch a bird. The whole world, Germany, China, all was quiet around Clara. The children looked at the sky. It was not forbidden. Mouth, nose, eyes were open. There was no danger. What Clara feared were the flu, the heat, the insects. Clara feared missing the 11 o'clock trolley, waiting for letters slow to arrive, not always being able to wear a new dress. But she strolled in the garden in the morning. They had gardens. They had mornings in those days. That's a poem about a cataclysmic event happening, and it seems there will be no more gardens. Second poem I'll read to you before reading the 40 names. Also is not written in English. It's by the great Polish poet Czesław Miłosz. I'll read it in my translation. The poem is called Incantation. And for me, it evokes the fact that these people, when they got on the airplane, had no intention of being heroes, voting, protecting. They wanted to go somewhere on ordinary, reasonable human business. And then their imagination was challenged by disaster. Incantation. Human reason is beautiful and invincible. No bars, no barbed wire, no pulping of books, no sentence of banishment can prevail against it. It establishes the universal ideas in language and guides our hand, so we write truth and justice with capital letters, lie and oppression with small. It puts what should be above things as they are. It is an enemy of despair and a friend of hope. It does not know Jew from Greek or slave from master, giving us the estate of the world to manage. It saves austere and transparent phrases from the filthy discord of tortured words. It says that everything is new under the sun, opens the congealed fist of the past. Beautiful and very young are philosophia and poetry, her ally in the service of the good. As late as yesterday, nature celebrated their birth. The news was brought to the mountains by a unicorn and an echo. Their friendship will be glorious. Their time has no limit. Their enemies have delivered themselves to destruction. I'll now say the 40 names. Christian Adams. Lorraine G. Bay. Todd M. Beamer. Alan Anthony Bevan. Mark Bingham. Deora Francis Bodley. Sarah Waugh Bradshaw. Marion R. Britton. Thomas E. Burnett, Jr. William Joseph Cashman. Georgine Rose Corrigan. Patricia Cushing. Jason M. Dahl. Joseph DeLuca. Patrick Joseph Driscoll. Edward Porter Felt. Jane C. Folger. Colleen L. Fraser. Andrew Sonny Garcia. Jeremy Logan Glick. Kristen Osterholm White Gould. Lauren Kutuzzi Grantkolis. And unborn child. Wanda Anita Green. Donald Freeman Green. Linda Gronlund. Richard J. Guadagno. Leroy Homer. Toshia Kuge. Cece Ross Lyles. Hilda Marcin. Waleska Martinez. Nicole Carol Miller. Louis J. Nackey II. Donald Arthur Peterson. Jean Hoadley Peterson. Mark David Rothenberg. Christine Ann Snyder. John Talignani. Honor Elizabeth Wainio. Deborah Jacobs Welsh.
Vice President Biden, President Bush, President Clinton, Secretary Salazar, Speaker Boehner, friends, families, and all those that chose to take time today to share in the bittersweet celebration of this memorial dedication. Thank you for honoring the memory of the passengers and crew of United Flight 93 with your presence. 10 years ago, when we first came to this hallowed ground, we were devastated, nearly broken. Our lives had changed in an instant, and at a time when we least expected the potential for such evil in the world. Today, with the dedication of the Flight 93 National Memorial, we are assured that the enduring legacy of our loved ones and their collective actions on September 11th, 2001 will be preserved, providing comfort, inspiration, and education for future generations. It has been a long road to this very day that seems to have passed in an instant. So many hurdles, so many steps to take, procedures to follow. Only a project as worthy as this could sustain a level of dedication on the part of so many that would see us through to this dedication on this 10th anniversary. On this occasion, it is proper and fitting to acknowledge those first responders joining us today that were called to action within minutes of the crash of Flight 93. As the course of our lives was so violently altered that day, they heard the call to duty, and in their own way were the first to honor our heroes through their actions. This level of action, dedication, and compassion within the Somerset County community and surrounding areas on the morning of September 11th, 2001, and during the period of recovery and investigation, was not unique, but rather the norm. Whether it is the ambassadors standing vigil here at the memorial, volunteers working with the National Park Service to preserve artifacts and oral histories, or community members opening their homes and hearts to families in our time of grief, this community has embraced this memorial project with all the dignity, grace, and honor I have come to realize is pervasive here in southwestern Pennsylvania and across the Commonwealth to Harrisburg. Senator Casey, Senator Toomey, Representative Schuster, Representative Kritz, the entire Pennsylvania delegation, as well as longtime champions of the Flight 93 National Memorial, former Governor Rendell, former Governor Ridge, Senator Specter, and the late Congressman Murtha. You have honored our government's commitment to be an active partner in the development of this project. With such upheaval in our world today, you have continued to fight the good fight in order to ensure this project has stayed on schedule and has continued to be appropriately funded. To the families, this sacred ground holds a deep and special significance. This is the final resting place of the crew and passengers of Flight 93, and we have worked hard to ensure that it is treated with the proper care and respect. We are grateful to Secretary Salazar and the National Park Service for their leadership in this memorial project, as well as for their current and future stewardship of this land. Superintendent Newland, Project Manager Reinbold, former Superintendent Hanley, and the entire team of rangers, ambassadors, and volunteers, we trust that you will continue to be the fierce advocates for our loved ones moving forward that you have demonstrated to be thus far. For while we are dedicating a memorial on this day, our job is not done. We look forward to a timely completion of this memorial project so that as future generations come to Somerset County seeking answers, they will have the ability to experience the complete vision of the memorial design. The story of Flight 93 is one that resonates with all that would hold near to their hearts the rule of law, the love of family, and the desire to control the destiny of one's life. Over 70,000 people from across the globe have demonstrated their support for the Flight 93 National Memorial through financial support, and nearly 1.5 million individuals have already come to this sacred ground in order to pay their respects to our 40 heroes. They have come asking questions, seeking perspective, as well as to tell their own stories and experiences of September 11th, 2001. All that have made the pilgrimage to this site, all that have worked tirelessly to create this memorial, and all of those that refuse to forget the individuals and their collective actions, honor the 40 crew and passengers of United Flight 93. We must choose to be inspired by the story of Flight 93 and seize the opportunity to hold fast to the hard-fought lessons learned on this sacred ground just 10 short years ago. As long as we continue to remember the actions of our loved ones, they remain alive in our hearts and in the hearts of our nation. Thank you.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Weep not for the memories. I'm so tired, but I can't sleep. Standing on the edge of something much too deep. It's funny how we feel so much, we cannot say a word, though we are screaming inside. Oh, we can't be heard. And I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Weep not for the memories. I'm so afraid to love you, more afraid to lose, clinging to a past that doesn't let me choose. Once there was a darkness, a deep and endless night. You gave me everything you had, oh, you gave me life. And I will remember you. Will you remember me?
Thank you, Sarah McLaughlin. That was beautiful for joining us today and for that perfect piece. This memorial would not have been possible without the strong and unwavering support of individuals, governments, groups, corporations, and foundations from across the country that have made personal and financial commitments to see it through. We welcome representatives of several of those groups. The first is Chris Sullivan, Chairman of the Flight 93 Capital Campaign and Vice Chairman of the National Park Foundation. Chris.
Thank you, John, and thank you for all that you've done for Flight 93 National Memorial. Your leadership is remarkable. Thank you very much, John. As a fundraising partner of the National Park Service, the National Parks Foundation is privileged to work with a dedicated group of partners. The corporations, businesses, foundations, and other organizations, the law firm of Porter Wright, who did the pro bono work on the land, who are committed to protecting this hallowed ground. Yet, nobody has given more than the relatives and family members of the 40 men and women of Flight 93. They feel the weight of the loss, and we admire you for your courage, your determination, your commitment, and your persistence in seeing this national memorial becomes a reality. And we're very excited that today the first step of that is being completed. This is an important endeavor to create a permanent place of recognition of the heroes, your loved ones, so that each generation knows of the incredible heroism, sacrifice, and horror that took place here 10 years ago. I would like to especially thank our honorary co-chairmen, General Tommy Franks and Governor Tom Ridge, for first asking me to participate, but more for your numerous trips and meetings with donors and your ongoing and positive enthusiasm and inspiration to see this effort through. I want you two to stand up so everybody can say thank you. As Gordy mentioned, some 75,000 individuals and organizations have made commitments to this national memorial. These donations, both large and small, inspire us to continue to move forward in order to fulfill the promise we made 10 years ago to remember these brave souls on board Flight 93. Your names will forever be recognized in our honor roll as well as in our hearts for your extraordinary generosity. Thank you for your part in making and dedicating this national memorial today. Though over 1.5 million visitors from around the world have visited the memorial, today marks the first time that we walk across the plaza and stand before this wall and come face with the quiet meadow surrounded by thousands of others who share the memories of 9/11. Visiting here stirs the memories and emotions that are still raw. We reflect, and we do, reflect on the incredible courage and conviction of the heroes of Flight 93, as well as the heartbreak and the sorrow of their loved ones. We are thankful that these ordinary citizens stood up and stopped another deadly and destructive attack on our nation. We would like to thank 5 organizations for underwriting today's events: Alcoa Foundation, Bank of America, Erie Insurance, Highmark, and Verizon. Thank you. Today's dedication marks an important milestone in the history and progress of the Flight 93 National Memorial, but is not the final step in the journey of healing and remembrance. What we see today is only part of the memorial. Behind you will be a visitor center filled with learning resources and public programs, 40 memorial groves encircling the vast field of honor, and a tower of voices whose tones will echo across this land. America has a long tradition of honoring its heroes in national parks, from the calm waters of Pearl Harbor to the majestic mountains of Mount Rushmore, to the endearing legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. We are pleased that these 40 men and women, the heroes of Flight 93, will be so honored. We are confident we can realize the full vision of the National Memorial. We ask for your continued support and ask you to encourage others to learn more about our efforts, and go to honorflight93.org if you can get them to participate. This has been a remarkable journey, and again, we have still work to do, but thank you, families. You're inspiration to all of us. We're going to get this done. With that, I'd like to present Secretary of Interior Ken Salazar, who's been just absolutely fantastic in these efforts. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you, and to Vice President Biden, to Dr. Biden, to President Clinton, to President Bush, to Mrs. Bush, to Speaker Boehner, and Senators Casey and Tooney, and all the members of the congressional delegation, the elected officials, but especially to the families today of Flight 93 who have worked so hard to make this day possible. We join together as friends and as families, as citizens, to forge from our memories an enduring monument to love, courage, and sacrifice. In one morning, a turn of history and a rush of heroes forever changed this land and this nation and this world. The battle that began 6 miles overhead ended with a roar of engines in this area behind us in the Stony Creek River. Since that day, millions of Americans have come to honor their heroes of Flight 93. They have brought to this hallowed ground their pictures, their letters, and their prayers. And the people of this land, themselves survivors and witnesses and first responders, welcomed those who came. They helped us mourn, they helped us reflect, and they helped us build a memorial for all of America and all the world for all time to see right in this place. To the citizens of Somerset County, and to those who led that effort, including Governor Ridge and Governor Rendell and General Franks and so many others, we thank you for making this day possible. To the landowners of this place in Somerset County, who gave of their property to this nation so that we might honor those who gave their lives here, we thank you. And to the architect, Paul Murdoch, who kept true to the landscape and to this event, your design has moved our hearts from the beginning. To the families of Flight 93, whom I have come to know well over the years, and to the Flight 93 Advisory Commission, the Flight 93 Memorial Task Force, the National Park Foundation, and the relentless and undying efforts of Neil Mulholland, its president, and to all Pennsylvania's elected officials, thank you for your leadership and for your vision. To the tens of thousands of citizens who have donated to this cause, more than 75,000 so far, you honor us all. And to the families themselves who have suffered the unspeakable tragedy, but who rededicated themselves so deeply to protecting this final resting place, their partnership in this process, in this place, will ensure that the legacy of your loved ones is never forgotten. I am honored and I am humbled to have worked with all of you to make this day happen, so we will never forget those heroes who gave their lives on this hallowed ground. Today, this special place, these 2,200 acres here, enter the care and trust of the Department of Interior and the National Park Service as the 389th unit of the National Park System. It joins the hallowed grounds of Gettysburg and Yorktown, Selma and Pearl Harbor as a place where patriots gave their lives for this nation. Here, like so many lands and sites we protect, we are reminded of that which binds us as one people. We are reminded that we all share in our nation's triumphs as well as its trials. We share dreams of peace and prosperity, and we are reminded that we stand up for one another, fight for each other, and defend the rights and dignity endowed to all humankind. The heroism of the passengers and crew of Flight 93 will endure forever. It will live in the hearts of visitors moved by the sights and sounds of this place. The field of honor, the groves of trees, the wind chimes that will one day be heard throughout this landscape. On behalf of the men and women of the National Park Service and the Department of Interior, we pledge, on behalf of President Obama, on behalf of this nation's citizens, we pledge to guard this hallowed ground so that all who visit may learn what happened here. We will tell the story of Flight 93 and its heroic 40 passengers. We will ensure that the 40 patriots who gave their lives are never forgotten, and we will see to it that the American values so evident that day, determination, resilience, and service, continue to inspire us, guide us, and give us hope for our future. Now it is my honor to read a letter from President Carter, who was not able to come, but asked that I read this letter to all of you who are assembled here. He says, I join with all of you in the dedication of the Flight 93 Memorial in a desire to honor and remember the men and women who died here 10 years ago tomorrow. At a time of great sadness, we nevertheless were inspired by the courage and sacrifice manifested by the passengers and crew of United Flight 93. Our nation was stricken by an unprecedented attack that brought death and injury to thousands of people and suffering to millions in the United States and around the world. I recognize the personal losses of the families and friends of those who perished in New York and Washington, as well as Pennsylvania. They receive my deepest condolences. All of us Americans suffered and found it difficult to understand such evil acts. The proper response includes an enhanced defense against terrorism and a renewed dedication to the values that make the United States a great nation. A commitment to truth, justice, peace, freedom, humility, human rights, and generosity. The creation of this National Memorial Park will help us remember what we have lost and what we must do. I expect it to be an inspiration and a comfort to all of us. Rosalind and I send our congratulations to those responsible for this memorial and our prayers for consolation and hope. Sincerely, Jimmy Carter. It is my honor to present to all of you here in Somerset County, in Pennsylvania, the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. Mr. Vice President, Dr. Biden, President Clinton, Mr. Speaker, members of Congress, my friends Tommy Franks and Tom Ridge, thank you for helping raise the money for this memorial. Members of the National Park Service and the National Park Foundation, all those who supported this memorial, but most importantly, the families of Flight 93. Laura and I are honored to join you in dedicating this memorial to the heroes of Flight 93. When the sun rose in the Pennsylvania sky 10 years ago tomorrow, it was a peaceful September morning. By the time it set, nearly 3,000 people were gone. The most lives lost on American soil in a single day since the Battle of Antietam. With the distance of a decade, 9/11 can feel like a part of a different era. but for the families of the men and women stolen, some of whom joined us today. That day will never feel like history. The memory of that morning is fresh, and so is the pain. America shares your grief. We pray for your comfort, and we honor your loved ones. September the 11th, 2001, innocent men and women went to work at the World Trade Center. They reported for duty at the Pentagon. They boarded American flights 11 and 77, United flights 93 and 175. They did nothing to provoke or deserve the deliberate act of murder that Al-Qaeda carried out. One of the lessons of 9/11 is that evil is real, and so is courage. When the plane struck the World Trade Center, firefighters and police officers charged up the stairs into the flames. As the towers neared collapse, they continued the rescue efforts. Ultimately, more than 400 police officers and firefighters gave their lives. Among them was the chief of the New York City Fire Department, Peter Gansey. As a colleague put it, he would never ask anyone to do something he didn't do himself. The Pentagon service members and civilians pulled friends and strangers from burning rubble. One Special Forces soldier recalls reaching through a cloud of smoke in search of the wounded. As he entered one room, he prayed to find someone alive. He discovered a severely burned woman and carried her to safety. They later met in the hospital, where she explained that she'd been praying for rescue. She called him her guardian angel. And then there's the extraordinary story we commemorate here. Aboard United Airlines Flight 93 were college students from California, an iron worker from New Jersey, veterans of the Korean War and World War II, citizens of Germany and Japan, a pilot who had rearranged his schedule so that he could take his wife on a vacation to celebrate their anniversary. When the passengers and crew realized the plane had been hijacked, they reported the news calmly. When they learned that the terrorists had crashed other planes into targets on the ground, they accepted greater responsibilities. In the back of the cabin, the passengers gathered to devise a strategy. At the moment America's democracy was under attack, our citizens defied their captors by holding a vote. The choice they made would cost them their lives, and they knew it. Many passengers called their loved ones to say goodbye, then hung up to perform their final act. One said, "They're getting ready to break into the cockpit. I have to go. I love you." Another said, "It's up to us. I think we can do it." In one of the most stirring accounts, Todd Beamer, a father of two with a pregnant wife at home in New Jersey, asked the airphone operator to join him in reciting the Lord's Prayer. Then he helped lead the charge to the front of the plane with the words, "Let's roll." With their selfless act, the men and women who stormed the cockpit lived out the words, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." And with their brave decision, they launched the first counteroffensive of the war on terror. The most likely target of the hijacked plane was the United States Capitol. We'll never know how many innocent people might have been lost. But we do know this: Americans are alive today because the passengers and crew of Flight 93 chose to act, and our nation will be forever grateful. The 40 souls who perished on the plane left a great deal behind. They left spouses and children and grandchildren who missed them dearly. They left successful businesses and promising careers and a lifetime of dreams they will never have the chance to fulfill. They left something else, a legacy of bravery and selflessness that will always inspire America. For generations, people will study the flight, the story of Flight 93. They will learn that individual choices make a difference, that love and sacrifice can triumph over evil and hate, and that what happened above this Pennsylvania field ranks among the most courageous acts in American history. The memorial we dedicate today will ensure that our nation always remembers those lost here on 9/11. But we have a duty beyond memory. We have a duty beyond honoring. We have a duty to live our lives in a way that upholds the ideals for which the men and women gave their lives, to build a living memorial to their courage and sacrifice. We have a duty to find common purpose as a nation. In the days after 9/11, the response came like a single hand over a single heart. Members of Congress from both sides of the aisle gathered on the steps of the Capitol and sang, "God Bless America." Neighbors reached out to neighbors of all backgrounds and beliefs. Past decade, our country has been tested by natural disaster, economic turmoil, anxieties, and challenges here at home and abroad. There have been spirited debates along the way. It's the essence of democracy. But Americans have never been defined by our disagreements. Whatever challenges we face today and in the future, we must never lose faith in our ability to meet them together. We must never allow our differences to harden into divisions. Second, we have a duty to remain engaged in the world. 9/11 proved that the conditions in a country on the other side of the world can have an impact on our own streets. It may be tempting to think it doesn't matter what happens to a villager in Afghanistan or a child in Africa, but the temptation of isolation is deadly wrong. A world of oppression and anger and resentment will be a source of never-ending violence and threats. A world of dignity and liberty and hope will be safer and better for all. The surest way to move toward that vision is for the United States of America to lead the cause of freedom. Finally, we each have a duty to serve a cause larger than ourselves. The passengers aboard Flight 93 set an example that inspires us all. Many have followed their path of service by donating blood or mentoring a child or volunteering in desperate corners of the earth. Some have devoted their careers to analyzing intelligence or protecting our borders and securing our skies. Others have made the noble choice to defend our nation in battle. For 10 years, our troops have risked and given their lives to prevent our enemies from attacking America again. They've kept us safe, they have made us proud, and they have upheld the spirit of service shown by the passengers on Flight 93. Many years ago, in 1863, another president came to dedicate a memorial site in this state. He told his audience that in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. For the brave souls who struggled there had consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. He added that the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. So it is with Flight 93. For as long as this memorial stands, we will remember what the men and women aboard the plane did here. We will pay tribute to the courage they showed, the sacrifice they made, and the lives they spared. The United States will never forget. May God bless you all.
Before President Bush came up to speak, I asked him if he was having a hard time. And he said, I was doing fine until I looked at you, all of you. Last night, Hillary came home after spending the day in New York, and her eyes were red because 10 years ago she was the senator representing those 343 firemen and nearly 900 people from Cantor Fitzgerald who died, and all the others. As we remember what happened in New York, at the Pentagon, and here, all the rest of us have to honor those who were lost, to thank those who love them for keeping their memory alive, raising their children, and finding the strength to go on with your own lives. I think we should also thank President Bush and those who served with him, Vice President Biden, President Obama, those who served with them, for keeping us from being attacked again. I thank them for that. Speaker Boehner, I thank you and the members of the Congress who are here and who have been in the Congress for the last 10 years, trying to respond to the findings of the 9/11 Commission and improve our ability to secure our homeland. But here, in this place, we honor something more. I was very moved, as you were, when President Bush calmly recounted the facts of what happened with your loved ones over this field a decade ago. There has always been a special place in the common memory for people who deliberately, knowingly, certainly laid down their lives for other people to live. President Bush is from Texas. I sometimes think, since I grew up in Arkansas, that's a more important difference between us than our partisan differences. But every child I grew up with was raised on the memory of the Alamo, the defining story of Texas. Why? Because those people knew they were going to die. But the time they bought and the casualties they inflicted in the cause of freedom allowed the whole idea of Texas to survive, and those who live there now to enjoy the life they do. The first such great story I have been able to find that reminds me of all your loved ones, however, occurred almost 2,500 years ago, when the Greek king of Sparta, facing a massive Persian army, took 300 of his finest soldiers to a narrow pass called Thermopylae. There were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. They all knew they were going to die. He told them that when they went. And the enemy said, we are going to fill the air with so many arrows that it will be dark. And the Spartans said, fine, we will fight in the shade. And they all died. But the casualties they took and the time they bought saved the people they loved. This is something different. For at the Alamo and at Thermopylae, they were soldiers. They knew what they had to do. Your loved ones just happened to be on a plane, as Mr. Penske said. with almost no time to decide, they gave the entire country an incalculable gift. They saved the Capitol from attack. They saved God knows how many lives. They saved the terrorists from claiming the symbolic victory of smashing the center of American government. And they did it as citizens. They allowed us to survive as a country that could fight terror and still maintain liberty and still welcome people from all over the world, from every religion and race and culture, as long as they shared our values. Because ordinary people, given no time at all to decide, did the right thing. And 2,500 years from now, I hope and pray to God that people will still remember this. So, since I am no longer in office, I can do unpopular things. I told the Secretary of the Interior, the head of your development program, that I was aghast to find out we still need to raise $10 million to finish this place. And Speaker Boehner and I have already volunteered to do a bipartisan event in Washington. Let's get the show on the road. Let's roll. Thank you, and God bless you.
President Clinton, thank you. You know, it feels a bit like the rabbit who wanders into the territory of eagles to speak after these folks here. But the difference is the eagles are friends. They're friends of every one of us here. Thank you, each and every one of you. My name is John Reynolds. I'm the chairman of the Federal Advisory Commission for the Flight 93 National Memorial. My colleagues and associates on the commission are interspersed amongst all of us here today. It's my pleasure to represent an incredible partnership and its focused, constant attention and action over the last decade. It's a partnership that is mostly invisible and unknown except to a few. Yet it created a vision coming to fruition here as a result of its diversity and commitment. It has created this national memorial, this national park. In a formal sense, the partnership consists of 5 groups. They are the families of Flight 93, family members of the 40 heroes. The Flight 93 Task Force, composed of family members, local people from Shanksville, Somerset County, Pittsburgh, and the Commonwealth, and others. They were the original group of citizens who imagined a national memorial here, worked to consensus, and took action to convince the Congress and President Bush to act. The Flight 93 Advisory Commission is the direct link between everyone else and the Department of Interior and the National Park Service. It's made up of 15 people representing the local community, the families, philanthropic, corporate, and national interests, and nationally recognized public historians. The National Park Foundation, the national fundraising arm of the partnership, and the National Park Service, the keeper of the nation's most important heritage from Yellowstone to the Statue of Liberty, from Concord and Lexington to Manassas and Shiloh, to here. All for we the people to enjoy, to reflect upon, and to learn about our nation from. These partners, however, barely reflect the many people who have given of themselves to arrive at today. They include the Flight 93 ambassadors, local people who took it upon themselves to help visitors starting within days of 9/11. First responders and the coroner, the newly formed Friends of Flight 93. All of you please join. Volunteers, contractors, consultants, public office holders, government employees, construction workers, and governors, generals, cabinet members, senators, congressmen, presidents, and first ladies, plus over 75,000 individuals who have donated their money to create this memorial, and the over 1,000 people and firms who shared their vision in an international design competition. This outpouring has been and continues to be a truly American undertaking. No one asks except to be friendly. Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? How come you care? All that is asked is sincerity. The result stands before us today. The people have done this. Paul and Melena Murdoch, architects, and Warren Bird, landscape architect, formally and beautifully designed what we see here today, and is what is left to come. Their real genius, though, is that they joined the chorus of our partnership of people, listened to it, and to the land, and to the sky, and played back their souls to create this representation of thanks, honor, and spirit of the 40 heroes of Flight 93 who acted together, fought back, prayed, gave their lives for us all and our nation. The heroes lie there by that big solid stone. They stand tall, mute, and solid, speaking to us forever in these 40 panels, each named, each equal, yet as evidenced in the unique veining in each marble slice, individuals who knowingly chose, voted, and then took action to avert an even greater American tragedy. They are the courage of free peoples everywhere. They are our past. They are our future. This place is the people's gift to America, a national park and a national memorial for as long as this nation shall live. It is my great and humble honor to present this memorial on behalf of the people of this wonderful partnership to all of the people of the United States of America. Will all of you please follow Mr. Jarvis? Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, I'm honored to be standing here today, standing with two former presidents. President Clinton, as he said, the passengers on Flight 93 knew that our common humanity is what united us most. Well, Mr. President, the same can be said of you. You've spent your time as president and the years since deeply committed to embracing and strengthening our common humanity. And Mr. President, we all thank you for what you've done and what you continue to do. Let me also recognize a man responsible for bringing our country together at a time when it could have been torn apart, for making it clear that America could not be brought to her knees, and helping us stand tall and strike back. President George W. Bush. In the darkest hour of our generation, your voice and leadership, Mr. President, helped us find our way. And for that, you deserve our gratitude for a long, long time. And I say now to the families that gather here today, I know what it's like to receive that call out of the blue, like a bolt out of the blue. And I know this is a bittersweet moment for you. And I want to tell you, you have a lot more courage than I have. You have a lot more courage just by being here today, because I know, and many others know, how hard it is to relive these moments, because it brings everything. It brings everything back in stark, stark relief, in stark detail. But I also know, like your loved ones, but you probably don't know, that you are literally an inspiration for the thousands of people across this country who right now are feeling the loss of an intense tragedy that they're suffering. They know, looking at you, watching you on television today, that there's hope to be found after tragedy, that there's rebirth in the face of death. You, in a sense, are as courageous as your family members were, and we owe you all for being here today, just the act of being here. We're here today to remember and honor 40 men and women who gave their lives so others could live theirs. Decent, honorable women and men who never imagined 10 years ago tomorrow that when they said goodbye to their children, when they kissed their loved ones goodbye and walked through that door, that they were doing it for the very last time. They didn't know the horror that awaited them, but they confronted unimaginable fear and terror with a courage that has been summoned only by the truest and the rarest of American heroes. 40 names etched on each of those panels on the wall of names. But more than that, their names are going to be, as President Bush said, etched forever into American history. They join an incredibly elite list of women and men in a long history filled with ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things, men and women of undaunted courage, uncommon resolve, and a stubborn perseverance in the face of unfathomable challenges. You know, we teach our children that these are qualities that are ingrained into our national character as Americans, and I believe they are. They animate our national identity. And I believe they'll continue to define America. because of the example of the men and women who we pay tribute today, the passengers and the crew on Flight 93. None of them asked for what happened. They didn't go on that plane. They didn't board that plane to fight a war. But when they heard the news, when they found out what happened in New York, they knew that they were going through with something more than a hijacking. They knew it was the opening shot in a new war. And so they acted. They acted as citizen patriots have acted since the beginning of our country. They stood up and they stood their ground. They thought, like Captain Parker said at Lexington, and I quote him, "If they mean to have a war, let it begin here." As many times as I recall, and all of you who are not family members like me have recalled this incident time and again over the last 10 years, I never fail to be astonished, literally astonished, by the courage they demonstrated. And so, we stand where it began. We think of them. We think of our nation. We think of our history. And we think of the future. And we think of it because of them with a confidence, knowing that ordinary citizens will continue to stare down fear, overwhelm evil, and bring forth hope from what seems to be none. And although it will continue to amaze us and inspire us when it happens, it should not surprise us. For that heroism is who we are. And that courage lies deepest and beats loudest in the heart of this nation. We know that these 40 men and women were more than ordinary Americans to all of you sitting in front of me. They were more than passengers and crews. They were already heroes. They were already heroes to you. They were the father that tucked you in bed at night. They were the wife who knew your fears before you even expressed them. They were the brother who lifted you up. They were the daughter who made you laugh. They were the son who made you proud. They are irreplaceable. I know that. We know that. And we know, and I know, that no memorial, no words, no acts can fill the void that they left in your hearts. My prayer for you is that 10 years later, their memory is able to bring a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eye. And I hope you take comfort in knowing that a grateful nation understands that your loved ones gave their lives in pursuit of the noblest of earthly goals, defending their country, defending their families, and sacrificing their lives so we could live ours. Those of us who were in Washington that day, without knowing it for sure at the time, now know we owe them an overwhelming, special, personal debt of gratitude. The collective spirit of your mother, your father, your brother, your husband, your wife, your sister, your best friend, that spirit lives on not only in you, but in your country. It lives on in the cross of steel made from the World Trade Center beams placed in a Pentagon-shaped platform that rests proudly outside the Shanksville Volunteer Fire Department. That cross of steel is an enduring symbol of the steel and the spine of this region and the spine of this country. and it definitely lives on in a new generation of warriors, the 9/11 generation. Inspired by what happened here, 2.8 million young Americans since 9/11, that 9/11 generation, have joined the United States Armed Forces. Thousands giving their lives and tens of thousands being wounded to finish the war that began here. Maya Angelou wrote, and I quote, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived. However, if faced with courage, need not be lived again." Ladies and gentlemen, we are not here to unlive history. We are here to honor those whose courage made history and is going to inspire generations of Americans to come. So I say to you, even as we struggle with this tragedy, even as we grapple with the profound loss and devastating grief, we can look up at the heavens and think of those heroes and know with certitude that there is not a single solitary tragedy that America cannot overcome. There is not a single moment of hardship that cannot be transformed into one of national strength. The seeds of doubt planted by those who wish to harm us will instead grow into flowering meadows like this one where we stand today. For they cannot defeat the American spirit. We know this with certainty. We know it with certainty because it's the history of the journey of this country at every stage of our history. As President Clinton knows, my mother used to say, "Courage lies in every heart." And she'd go on to say, and the expectation is that, Joey, one day it will be summoned. Courage lies in every heart, and one day it will be summoned. On September 11th, 2001 at 9:57 a.m., it was summoned. And 40 incredible men and women answered the call. They gave their lives, and in doing so, gave this country a new life. We owe them. We owe you a debt we can never repay. Thank you all. Thank you, family members. And may God bless you, and may God protect our troops.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for the break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction. Oh, beautiful release. Memories seep from my veins. Let me be empty. Oh, weightless, and maybe I'll find some peace tonight. In the arms of dark hotel room, the endlessness that you fear, you are pearled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the angel. You find some comfort here. So tired of the straight line, and everywhere you turn, there's vultures and thieves at your back. The storm keeps on twisting, you keep on building lies that you make up for all that you lack. It don't make no difference. Escaping one last time, it's easier to believe in this sweet madness, or this glorious sadness that brings me to my knees. In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear. Oh, you are pearled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the angel. May you find some comfort here. You're in the arms of your angel. May you find some comfort here.
I would ask that you all remain standing for the retirement of the colors and the benediction by Father Coughlin.
We bless you and we praise you, Lord God, who unites the heavens and the earth. We ask your blessing upon this hallowed place and all those whose memory we call to mind today by name. Grant them eternal rest, and we, the living, beg you to reward them for their sacrifice. Grant consolation and confidence in the future to their families and all who mourn them, their loss today. Bless all of us, Lord, who are gathered here. Give us safe travel, and may peace await our homes, our place of destination. And as you transform this land with new growth, deepen the commitment of those who wish to finish this work begun. Bless their efforts and bring it to completion. Bless our nation, Lord, and all the nations of the earth, that your people may flourish in ordinary living of family and business and life of government, and that we might enjoy your presence now and forever. Amen.
As we bring this ceremony to close, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. For the families and friends who live with the losses of September 11th every day, this memorial is a small expression of your nation's gratitude. Those who you love are our heroes. They are with us always, immortalized in this quiet field. And you have my solemn vow as the Director of the National Park Service and representing the men and women of that organization that we will be here every day, every year, every future generation to honor those heroes, your husbands and wives, your mothers and fathers, your sons and daughters, to tell their stories, to make sure that America and the world never forgets. I would ask that everyone remain in their space while our dignitaries step down the front steps here. And the families, the memorial wall is yours for the next half hour and yours alone. So thank you all. Thanks for coming.
can't see him anymore, so I'm trying to get some good pictures. People walking down the street. hand this disc off you. You seen Senior at all? You seen Senior at all? Oh, no? Hey, Austin. Hey, Austin. He hasn't ate it. He's still right there on the turkey.